So this is my YouTube homepage. These are Japanese thumbnails, words, images, more words. They probably look busy to you. This is the kind of thumbnail I see in English videos. Simpler, one clear message, clean. For a long time, I've wondered why our designs end up looking so different. Because we are all human, you know. When most people look at Mount Fuji, they feel the same thing. It's beautiful. Our basic sense of beauty isn't really that different. So where does this gap actually come from? What I found wasn't a single cause. It was several, quietly tangled together, each one holding the next in place. By the end of this video, I think you might stop calling Japanese design busy at all. When I first noticed this difference in thumbnail design, the first thing that, came to mind was, is this just about thumbnails? It reminded me of a conversation I had a while back with my friend about the design difference between Japanese and Western e-commerce sites. In Japan, I usually use two platforms, Amazon and Rakuten. You probably know Amazon. Rakuten, if you haven't heard of it, it's one of Japan's largest online marketplaces. So both sell almost the same things, but when I look at them side by side, I realized something surprising. They look completely different. For example, let's look at this product page for matcha. First, let's check out Amazon. It's very simple. Above all, the next action is crystal clear. If you want to buy it, you can add it to your cart immediately from the right side. If you want more details, you can just expand the description. And as far as I know, Amazon uses almost this exact same design globally. On the other hand, here is the Rakuten page for the exact same product. While there is a small buy button on the right, the sheer amount of information and the images you encounter before reaching it is, overwhelming. Just as a side note, it took me roughly 6 to 7 scrolls to actually reach the main purchase button. Of course, there are platform specific rules to consider, such as required number of images. Still, I feel like Rakuten, a Japanese company, is very intentional about providing as much information as possible to the user. It makes me feel that this isn't just a matter of taste. It might be that a way of processing information is fundamentally different. However, we can't ignore some aspects. Thumbnails and websites don't exist in isolation. They are shaped by algorithms, templates, and global trends. So maybe this difference could be just digital. If this way of presenting information is a Japanese way of communicating and cultural design, I couldn't help but think that the same grammar must be seeping into everyday spaces. Not only in the browser, in the city itself. So I came to here Shibuya. This is a perfect place to find a wide variety of Japanese design. Look at this, it's already so busy. This is just the starting point of Shibuya Station. So many people. Alright, so this is the first intersection outside Shibuya Station. Even from here, you can already feel it. Screens everywhere, color layered on color. Messages stacked on top of each other, but this is just the surface. To find more detail, we need to step inside. The sheer volume of information here is wild. At the first glance, your eyes go to the massive signs with shop names, but look closer at these smaller brands. It's fascinating. Things like price, location, and specific services, and often way more prominent than the actual name of the shop. Normally, you would think the brand name should be the key of the design, right? But in Japan, the what and how much takes center stage. Alright, so look at the menu behind me. This is exactly what I usually see in Shibuya. The restaurant menu. As you see, there are so many images and words and prices. It's really complicated, but this is exactly what we saw on Rakuten website shopping page. There's definitely a strategic reason behind this. One thing that really stands out with these restaurant signs is the heavy use of photos. In my mind, a typical Western restaurant might just have a simple, chalkboard with something like today's special, like roasted chicken with rosemary written on it, something like that. And interestingly, I spotted an IKEA ad with just one single product in it. For some reason, it felt incredibly right and refreshing here. This is obviously an exception here in Shibuya. Alright, so far we've looked at Japanese design online and offline, and I've noticed is that the information is always centered and crammed most of the case. This is exactly what I want to find out. Why our Japanese way of communicating is so much complicated. What's the reason behind that? Considering how information overloaded all design is, I feel the answer isn't the modern web or the digital age. It's rooted much deeper in Japan's past. So I searched the museum in Japan where I can learn Japanese design history, and I found a perfect place. It's the Art Museum. I couldn't film inside, unfortunately, which I expected, honestly. I'm walking out of there with my head absolutely buzzing with information. This is what it was like. So here's the part that surprised me the most. Look at this. At the Art Museum, I kept seeing something called hikifuda. They are basically printed arts from century ago used to promote shops, products, and even medicine, whatever. Do you notice something? They don't feel distant at all. A lot of them are still visibly loud, bold illustrations packed with text-bright designs. But that means this style wasn't created by modern technology. It was already working over 400 years ago in a completely different era in Japan. So why are Japanese designers then and now so willing to fill every corner with information? The way I think about it is this. In Japan, making the customer pause to ask, wait, what does this mean, is treated almost like a failure of design. You're supposed to anticipate the question and have the answer already sitting there, right where they are looking. So this is close to omotenashi, Japanese hospitality, but maybe not in the gentle way it's usually described. In practice, it can become a kind of defensive perfectionism. The producer doesn't want to leave any room for confusion, mixed conditions, or I didn't know that, or shaped complaints later, something like that. Look closely at any Japanese art, and you often find tiny asterisk text under the main headline, a wall of microscope notes spelling out every condition, every exception, something like that. I always wonder who can read that small text. So when main message is simple, the fine print gets free written out. Nothing implied, nothing left to interpretation. And there is something else going on too. In Japan, the amount of information itself reads as a kind of signal. A product page packed with details like specs, conditions, photos, and notes doesn't feel cluttered to a Japanese viewer. It feels like the seller actually cared. As if to say, I took the time to lay it all out for you because you matter. So when Japanese design packs information, it isn't really trying to shout. It's trying to be through, to leave nothing for the customer to second guess. There's one more piece to this. When I look at Western designs with very little information, they don't feel unfriendly to me. They often feel kind of luxurious. When explanations are minimal, it carries an impression of, confidence. You don't need to explain everything. It's very similar to what people now call quiet luxury. But here is the catch. This kind of design trends work in Japan only when the brand is already known and trusted. Take Uniqlo. Almost everyone in Japan knows the brand. You probably know it. Their website is incredibly simple, but that simplicity works precisely because the brand itself already carries strong credibility in Japan. When an unknown product or store tries the same minimal approach here, the result is different, I guess. There's nothing to go on. People have no bias for a decision, and they may just skip past it. So in Japan, information isn't decoration. It's the producer doing the work up front. So the customer never has to second guess, even before they've heard of you. So now if you're used to simple minimal designs, there's a natural objection forming in your head. Okay, maybe packing information is true, but isn't all of this just overwhelming? Can people really process this much in a single glance? It's a fair question, because in reality, whether it's a thumbnail or a signboard, we usually only see these things for a very short moment, sometimes not even a full second. If you only have a second, more information sounds like more noise. But here's what I noticed as a Japanese person. In most situations, this amount of information genuinely seems to work for us. The reason is simple. We are not actually reading everything. We scan, we pick few pieces we need, and let the rest sit in the background. Japanese design isn't really asking viewers to read it. It's something like saying, take whatever you need, leave the rest. And that's an important shift because it means these dense designs work not only because of how the designer arranges things, but because of how the viewer looks at them. But here, that raises a new question. If Japanese viewers are so good at scanning these dense surfaces, where exactly did that skill come from? Honestly, as a Japanese, I don't remember struggling with information dense designs even as a child. You'd expect a young kid just starting to read to be overwhelmed by all this, and yet it always just felt normal. My personal guess is that this skill gets quietly trained every day by the environment we live in. So one clearest example for me is manga. If you grew up in Japan, you probably read manga as a kid. And if you look closely at a single page, there's actually a lot happening at once. Panel drawing, dialogue, sound effects, background details, inner monologues, so many things. Multiple layers of information sit on the same page, and the reader has to, weave them together. You don't go through them one by one. You just jump around, pick up what matters, and piece together the story. I clearly remember moments as a kid where I'd be reading along, then suddenly think, wait, how did the story get here? And I'd flip back a page to figure out what I missed. So looking back now, that almost feels like training. Tiny repeated reps of picking out the important pieces from a dense visual field. And of course, manga isn't the only one. Japanese newspapers and magazines tend to be denser than their Western counterparts, but multiple stories competing for attention on a single spread. So Japanese TV variety shows pile captions, sound effects, and the reaction graphics on top of that, actual footage after 2 or 3 layers of information running at once. That's quite usual in a Japanese TV. And then there is the, street themselves. The Shibuya intersection we walked through earlier is essentially the same skill applied to physical space. Signs, screens, menus, prices, shop names, all layered together. If you grew up surrounded by all of this, by the time you are an adult like me, parsing a busy thumbnail or packed product page doesn't feel difficult. It feels familiar and oddly a little bit reassuring. But here's what I kept coming back to. This training I just described, the manga, the streets, the dense environment, or whatever, none of it is new. Japanese daily life has been visually dense for longer than any of us have been alive. And once I started pulling on that thread, it took me much further back than I expected. If this design style has been here for 400 years, the obvious explanations start to fall apart. Not modern technology, obviously. Hikifuda predated electricity itself. Not Western influence as well. They were everywhere in Edo period in Japan, when the country was largely close to the West. Not even modern Japanese culture, really. The people who designed these lived in a world unrecognizably different from ours. So what had stayed essentially the same? One answer rising to the top is language. The writing system on those 400-year-old Hikifuda is in its core structure still the system Japanese people use today. Kanji, hiragana, katakana, the same 3 scripts, woven together in essentially the same way. If this design style has survived everything else changing, maybe what kept it alive is the one thing that didn't change, the way Japanese is written. So let's look at that. So what's unusual about Japanese and what I now think makes this whole design style possible is that it doesn't rely on a single writing system. It uses 3 at the same time. Kanji, characters that each carry meaning. Hiragana, a phonetic script for grammar and connective words. Katakana, a phonetic script mostly used for foreign words and product names. This combination does something interesting for design. Just by switching scripts, you immediately get a hint about what kind of word you are looking at. So katakana, probably a product name. Short kanji, probably the key concept. Hiragana, probably connecting text, less critical to focus on. It's almost like having 3 different fonts built directly into the writing system. Except instead of like styling, the characters themselves signal their role. Now here's the part that really matters for design. Kanji are logographic. Each character carries a meaning, as I told you, not just a sound. So you can pack a strong message into a very small space. Limited, discount, free, new release, 2 or 3 characters and you're done. But you can fit messages like these into corners and gaps that would be hard to use in English, where the same idea would need much longer words. And as a native speaker, I sometimes don't even need to see the whole word. Take 新発売, new release, like 3 characters in an ad. If I just glimpse the first character, new, I can easily guess what the full word is. Each character is like doing that much work on its own. English has another tool that Japanese doesn't. Uppercase versus lowercase. You can use all caps to shout or lowercase to feel quiet. Japanese doesn't have that distinction. So to create emphasis, designers reach for visual tool instead. Box around text, blanket, decorations, color, background blocks. This is part of Japanese designs end up looking the way they do. Like those colorful frames and, accent aren't just like decoration. They are doing the job caps does in English. So let's see how all this combines. Walk into Japanese, let's say drugstore, and you will see ads like this. To a Japanese person, several things register almost instantly. Red color is basically a sale or promotion. Red is like standard signal for campaigns here. We can also use it for the price tag as well. Katakana block, that's a mostly product name. So kanji nearby, they are basically key features or key messages for like new, limited, high moisture, something like that. So none of this requires actually reading. It's pattern recognition, built up over a lifetime of seeing the same conventions repeat. So when Japanese design looks like a wall of information, what really happening is closer to a sorted display. The script type, the color, the framing, each one is a quiet label saying, I'm this kind of information. Viewers like us pick up the labels they care about and move on. And once this clicks, that 400-year continuity stops being strange. The design has lasted because the language has lasted. The same script that fed Hikifuda 4 centuries ago are still feeding summoners today. Still doing the same quiet work, sorting, signaling, making density readable. So looking back at everything, it's hard to explain Japanese design with a single reason. What's interesting for me is how all of these elements overlap. Imagine Japan kept the same culture and society, but the language was English as you use. English is built on an alphabet. Unlike kanji, a single letter usually can't carry meaning by itself. If that were the case, design that packs so much information into such small spaces probably wouldn't have worked as well. But the reverse is also true. The Japanese language alone wouldn't have created this style either. A culture that values laying out information openly, a way of looking that takes in the whole scene, and a daily environment full of visual input from childhood. It's only when all of these stack together that you get what you see today. At the beginning of this video, do you remember? I said that when most people look at Mount Fuji, they feel the same thing. Their basic sense of beauty isn't really that different. And I still think that's true. But maybe what is different is what we want a design to do for us. What makes us feel safe? What makes us feel ready to act? Once you see it that way, busy stops being the right word. Japanese design isn't trying to overwhelm you. It's trying to anticipate you, to answer your questions before you ask, to make sure nothing important is hidden. In other words, maybe what looks like noise is actually a kind of hospitality. Right before you go, I want to hear your side of this. If you're not Japanese, what was your first reaction when you saw Japanese summoners' website or street arts, basically Japanese designs? Did they feel messy, charming, or overwhelming? Drop a comment, I read them, and honestly, this video is just one perspective. And if this video got you thinking, I made another one you will probably like, a deeper look at culture differences in Japan. Click it and I will see you over there. Thanks so much for watching.